I always had a passion for bees. Never knew that much about them, never knew what they did. And we had a dumpster in our yard, and when it started, every year that it blossomed and flowers, bees just keep coming around. Never knew that they were collecting nectar, collecting pollen, whatever. I was just fascinated by the bees. But then after I left school in the 80s, I started converting my diet into my living and became a vegetarian. So I was trying to avoid sugar and stuff like that. So I got into honey. But I noticed honey was kind of expensive for me to maintain on a weekly basis, going into the supermarket and buying, yeah, and not getting the real product that I desired, because the local honey is far, far superior to the pasteurized foreign honey. Because of the fact that there's so much pest and disease in most of these bigger countries that do bees, because of the way they do bees, they have to pasteurize the honey to a certain temperature to kill spores of bacteria and stuff that might end up in the honey. So most of the honey that come from these places has been reduced. It's not a food nor a medicine anymore. It is just a sweetener. So I started thinking, you know what? If I get into beekeeping and keep a few hives as a hobbyist, I'll be able to sustain my regular diet with honey. The normal approach when you go into when you want to go into a beehive is to smoke the entrance and raise the lid and smoke under the lid to drive the bees at the top below, and those are the entrance in. Because at the entrance you have what you call guard bees, and they basically protect the colony from invaders. When you smoke the bees, it sends an alarm, it triggers an alarm, let them be aware that there's something out of the ordinary happening. Now when bees are disturbed in that way, they think, well, they might have to be moved. So they start ingesting honey. Start filling their stomach with honey in the event that they have to take off. They have enough food reserved to keep them for a while until they find a new home. In doing that, they're not able to sting as readily as a bee who has an empty stomach. Because to be able to sting, the abdomen of the bee have to be curved in order for it to release the stinger and the venom in the stinger. So there's a local saying which says empty paper bag can't stand up, but the reverse of that too is full paper bag can't bend. Okay, so that's basically it. When a bee's stomach is filled with honey, it's not able to curve its abdomen easily to sting. So that's one of the methods you use to kind of suppress the stinging, is to put some smoke in the colony, let them know something's happening. They start ingesting honey, and because they're busy doing that and also being filled with honey, they don't readily sting as if you just go in and bam bam open up a colony. So it's a kind of defense mechanism. Entrance. Sometimes it's easy to lift the lid without the hive tool because there mightn't be much going on in the top box. As you notice here, it's just started, so you don't have a whole lot of bees in the honey supers yet. If you notice, we have some frames that have been slung already. We have some frames that are old frames that was in the brood box. The brood box is where the queen stays and lay her eggs. Bees collect pollen and stuff like that. They raise their brood. We pull a few of those frames to the top to encourage the bees to come to the top quickly. But there is much happening in the weather right now, so there's much thing going on. They're not collecting much nectar. So for me, if I was looking for the health of the colony, food source, presence of a queen, lack of presence of disease and pests and stuff like that, I'd have to go down in the brood box. So I'd have to take the top box, which is the honey super, off because there's much happening up here. So from this I won't be able to see much. There are times when you can come and you look at the entrance of your hive and you say they're working properly. You might have doubt, reservations, and you say, let me go in to see what's happening. I'm not alarmed over this. It doesn't look out of the ordinary, but I just want to go down and take a quick look and see. Now from the sound of this colony, right? Because there are lots of ways you can tell if a queen is present. Because of how organized the bees sound and seem, you can tell that there's a queen, because that's one of the job of the queen, is to keep colony unity. If there's no queen, there's no presence of a queen, everything goes awry until they have a queen, and that's their focus. Immediately that they find out that there isn't a queen, which is because of the lack of the queen pheromone. Within about 72 hours of removing a queen, or a queen has been dead also, they start drawing out cells. Start drawing out worker cells that's young enough. That's the critical part in making a queen from a worker cell. Is to have the larvae young enough that they can feed with special brood food, not the ordinary brood food that they used to feed the workers. That's where the royal jelly comes in. Want to hold it? Feel the weight? No? Okay. Well, as beekeepers, I think we have a duty to make sure that bees in sufficient numbers are on the island. Not only for our personal use to make honey so we can make $1 from, but also to get more food on the market, better production for farmers and stuff like that. So some of the things that we do is that we try to, well, I was a part of association, I'm not now. Ken, who is my partner in our business, he's still a member of the association. So what the association do is that they teach new beekeepers so we can have more beekeepers, which means more hives. We also allow feral colonies to thrive, because that is a necessity. You don't want to have all managed colonies on the island, because the feral colonies do play a part too. They also supply us with extra bees if we want. So that's two of the ways that we try to keep the bee population on the island strong. We encourage feral colonies in the wild. We don't go around and removing every feral colonies out there. We do remove hives from people's property, whether business property, domestic property, or what. But we don't actually go into the wild and remove hives, because it's something that we encourage, feral colonies. It's how most of us got started, by going into the wild, having a box, going into the wild and put a hive in. You know? And the bees basically do a good job of it themselves too, because every year, after harvesting, or after production, you go to what you call a dirt period, which is the dry season. So it simply stands to reason that if there's not enough food to feed the two boxes, to feed the bees in the colony, what they do, they divide in two. Half of the colony will leave with enough food and the queen and go and find another colony. That's why you call swarming. Now the other half is left with queen cell, not yet emerged. And they will emerge and they will choose their queen. She goes out on a mating flight. That's a very, 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 very critical point in the bee life. Because if the queen goes out on a mating flight and she doesn't get back, that colony will collapse. Because remember now, they don't have a queen in the colony that's laying eggs and producing larvae for them to draw out and feed with royal jelly to make a new queen. So that's when the hive can suffer. You as a beekeeper need to monitor that during the swarming season, that colony has a queen, she's mated, and she's laying, and you're good to go. So what we do, we simulate swarms by doing splits. It's the same thing we do, it's just that as opposed to the bees doing it themselves, we will do it as a process of selection to get some of the best hives in your apiary to reproduce them. So that's some of the ways that you just keep the bee colony on the island strong. About the different products of the hive. Most persons know bees, they sting and they collect honey. Honey is just a side product of what the bees do. The most important thing that bees do within the environment is pollination. Over 40% of the food that reaches our table are pollinated by bees. The two major pollinators are bees and birds. Bees are the most dominant. Okay? So without bees to pollinate our crops, there wouldn't be much production at all, or none. So that's the first thing. Honey production is not the first work of the bees. They produce honey to feed themselves. Because basically honey is their energy, pollen is their protein, and other minerals and stuff. So they collect honey or nectar, which they convert to honey, pollen, which is one of their food source. They also collect propolis, which is the resin of a plant, which has high medicinal value, which is used a lot in pharmaceutical products. So they collect it to, what they do is to mummify any foreign object that comes into the hive, because frogs and rats like to dwell in bee colony. The condition is very, very good for them, and frogs eat bees a lot too. Yeah, so they will go in, eat your bees, cool out and stuff like that. Now if they're dead in the colony, the bees cannot remove them, so they mummify them with the propolis. They use the propolis also to connect the frames to the hive body and the lid to the hive body. So that's why we have to use the hive tool when we go in to pry the lid off, because it's actually stuck almost like with glue. So that's the resin. That's another byproduct of the hive. That's what they collect for the purpose of doing that. But scientists and stuff have researched and found out that it's has high medicinal value. So it's in demand a lot. Wax is another byproduct of the hive, which we don't utilize a lot in Antigua, but it is in almost all cosmetic products. Hair grease, face balm, lip balm, the whole 9 yards. So a bee colony is not just to produce honey. There's so much other different things that they produce that you can make money from. It's just that we focus on honey. Okay? Now, I mentioned they collect nectar because that's the energy source, that's the carbohydrates, and they collect pollen, which is more the protein source. Pollen is sold also in health food store, because it has most of the amino acids that are found in protein, and it's very, very, very strong as a food supplement and stuff. So what I was going to explain to you is that what they do, they pack the pollen. When they bring it in, they scrape it off their hind legs, pack it into the cell, and when they're ready to use back the pollen to make food, through the food, add secretions from the mandibular gland, which is a gland in the head of the bee, and secretion from another gland, the hypophalangical gland, to make the normal brood food. That will just give them brood food, which they use every day. Now, if the bees are making queen, what they will do is produce a higher secretion from the mandibular gland as opposed to the brood food, where it's a higher secretion from the hypophalangical gland, and it is much richer, much richer. That is where pollen comes in critical in queen rearing, because you need to feed the bees with royal jelly, which is the rich form of brood food. That is why the queen, the worker, develops so fast and becomes a queen. So if they know they want to make a queen or make a few queens, because they don't make one, they'll make 15, 25 queens, draw 15, 25 queen cells. So the royal jelly is just a rich source of bee food. That's carrying pollen on its legs, on its hind leg. Okay. I wanted was to show you a drone to show you the difference in size, but I think the drone has already skipped the frame. We might see when we go in. Because right now they're not in need of a whole lot of drone. They make drones when it's mating season, which is what we call swarming season. Because that's basically the work of the drone, is to mate with queens during mating season. That's why they're seasonal, because they don't need them all year round. A queen is the only bee in a hive that lives for more than, well, the lifespan of a worker bee is 30 days. So that's why it's important that you have a young, good laying queen to replace all those bees that are dying in every 30 days. Now the queen can live for 3 to 7 years. Now this is what we call brood. That's worker brood, and that's drone brood. You notice the dome shape of this one as opposed to the flat concave shape of that one. It's because this is the worker brood and below you have the drone. I can shake them from the hive so you can see better. If you want to keep it with the bees, it's okay. You can see it better on this side. Drone, workers. And there are a few empty cells. And there are even a few with a bit of pollen in. So on this frame you basically see, and here you also see uncapped brood. So that's in its larva stage, because you know the insect goes through egg, larva, pupa, adult. So that's the insect, that's basically how they do. The queen goes into the cell, she lays the eggs, hatches in 3 days. Then you have another 7 to 9 days in the brood, in the larva stage, then into the pupa stage, and they emerge in 21 days. That's the worker. The drone emerge in 23 days. Now in tropical climate, you might find it happens even faster, you know, because in temperate climate, a queen emerges in 16 days. We have queen emerging here in 14, 15 days, you know. It does happen. So it's like things just get more faster. See, there's some nectar, that wet stuff in the cell. That's nectar because it's not ripened as yet. If you notice at the top of this frames, it's sealed with wax capping. That's ripened honey. They only seal it with the wax covering when it's already ripe, because in that stage it's just nectar. So what they have to do is to remove the water content from the nectar. Now if you notice on the leg of this bee, it has an orange color moving with this one. You see it? That's pollen on the leg of the bee. That's how they carry the pollen. They have what you call a pollen basket on the back, the hind leg. And when they go into the plant, because bees go to plant for 2 different things. It's either for nectar or for pollen. So all plants doesn't provide nectar, and all plants doesn't provide pollen. So if they're foraging for pollen, you can actually see the evidence of pollen on the body of the bee, mostly in the hind leg. Okay? I wouldn't mind taking another because I'm not seeing any brooders yet. And that's what you want to see. Not seeing any brooders yet. And the food source doesn't look all that exciting. Now this is basically mostly honey. Capped honey at the top, empty cells below. And you're going to notice that these cells, notice the size of these cells, because we're going to encounter other cells that are smaller. These are drone cells, because a drone bee is larger than a worker bee. The drone is the male of the colony, the worker is the female. All of the bees you're seeing here so far are worker bees because the drone is seasonal. You won't find a drone in a colony 365 days in the year. Come on. Yeah, I was saying some beekeepers also collect royal jelly. So the hive produce honey, pollen, propolis, wax, and royal jelly. Now to produce royal jelly, what the beekeeper does is he removes the queen. He or she removes the queen. When the queen is removed, the bees get a sense that they don't have a queen, so they start drawing out queen cells to make queens. Drawing out queen cells, they make the cells face down as to face out. That's how queen cells look. And it's bigger because the queen has a larger body than a normal worker bee. So after that process is done, they feed these larvae with royal jelly. So the cell is loaded with royal jelly because after they cap them, there's no other way of feeding them. So they supply the brood in the cell with enough royal jelly to take them through the 16 days of, well, 13 days after 3 days of egg stage. So what the beekeeper will do is when they're in that stage, they will take the pipette, and put it into the hive, the cell, and extract the royal jelly. Yeah, so that's one of the way of collecting royal jelly, which is another byproduct of the hive. Sells for high price in health food store. Very, very nutritious and healthy. They're just getting a bit irritated because I have them open so long. And if you notice, I'm being very careful and quiet with the bees. It's not any banging of equipment, putting boxes on the ground in a hurry, shaking, taking frames out willy-nilly wild and stuff, because that irritates the bees. So there's a very slow, meticulous way in which I do bees. I work fast, but I do it in a very orderly way. Because you can, the less you do to irritate the bees, the better for you, the beekeeper and the bees. You know? So from 1996, I've been officially a beekeeper until now. I went on to start training people on the island, you know, doing beekeeping and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's how I actually started, and here's where I am now. Because when you really get into bees, you normally don't really turn back, you know. It just grows on you. You're just fascinated. You just, yeah. And if you love nature, you just have to love the bees, because without the bees, one of the greatest philosophers say, if the bees become extinct, he give man 10 years to live. Because they supply our food, and it's serious. It's very, very serious. You know, so I wish people would take the bees more seriously, and recognize and consider them not as pests, but as beneficial insects. It's the only living insect that I know that produce food. Okay? And not only produce food for themselves so you can have some of it, they produce food in the farm for us too, in terms of pollination. So yeah, they're very, very beneficial. They're not just, well, as a beekeeper, we learn to appreciate the bees more because of our knowledge, but the average layman would not understand that. And that's something that we've been doing for years too, is to try to educate even farmers. You see, we have 6 of our hives on a farmer's property. It's benefiting him as much or even more to have these hives here than for us having them here. Okay, but there's some farmers who don't really buy into it, and they don't because Antigua is such a small place that feral colonies, which are colonies not managed or domesticated, colonies just in the wild, colonies in old towers, abandoned homes, in rocks and stuff like that, they inadvertently get free pollination because they have hives so close. Now they got a rude awakening in 2005 when we got the mite, the Varroa mite. It wiped out actually, I would say about 100% of the feral colonies and about 90% of the managed colonies on the island. So between that time, there was no pollination. Guys have to be walking around in their farm with a brush taking pollen from the male plant to the male flower to the female flower with the pumpkins and stuff, and you know that's just wasting time. Yeah, and then that's where the farmers realize that they need the bees. Yeah, so guys are coming to me borrowing hives, you know, asking me to put some hives on their farm and stuff like that. And they always still different. Always get the result. So it's a proven fact that when bees are now close to your farm, yeah, it helps in terms of your production, your size of your fruits, your consistency of shape. Yeah, bees do all that. Yeah, so I want to say hi to Calypso Kids TV, who made it possible for us to be here this morning to be sharing knowledge. Hope I see you guys soon and you have a wonderful summer. Bye.